It's now my pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Petra Karlsson, who's going to give us a brief update on what's happening in the world of research. Petra.
Thank you, and lovely to meet you all. And may I say, what a beautiful dress you have. So I'm here to, I represent my lovely team, and who you can see up on the screen there, and talk about some of our key research projects, and that range from prevention and cure to knowledge translation and intervention studies. And I will start by touching on some of the projects related to prevention and cure. In 2011, the Research Foundation of Cerebral Palsy Alliance and the Naves Foundation hosted a summit on prevention and cure of cerebral palsy. And from this initial meeting, a new network, the International Multidisciplinary Prevention and Cure Team for CP, was formed. And IMPACT is an open collaboration of scientists, researchers, clinicians, and families. And the group has worked together with key researchers on establishing guidelines on early diagnosis, a protocol for neural stem cells research, and now in 2016, in February, over 30 researchers will come together and develop a research agenda on neonatal stroke. And here you see Sarah McIntyre. Sarah is also working on IMPACT, but in November this year, she also received the great news that she has been awarded the prestigious NHMRC fellowship to support her research for the next 4 years. The NHMRC is a prestigious fellowship to receive. It's the Australian medical research funding body, and they only this year gave out 11 of these fellowships to the University of Sydney. So we're extremely proud of her, and it's going to be great for Sarah and great for our team and for cerebral palsy. And what she will look at is evaluating the impact of 2 new measures, preventative measures for CP, cooling and magnesium sulfate. And we know that they work in research, but what Sarah will do is to measure if and how they work in clinical practice, and see if they actually reduce the rates. And then we have CMV. And CMV is a common herpes virus, and that can be transmitted to the developing fetus through the mum. But unfortunately, mothers are normally not aware that they might be carrying this virus. And because there might not be any symptoms, or you might have very mild symptoms in form of like a mild cold or a flu. And there is today no screening of CMV, so we actually don't really know how common CMV is in cerebral palsy. But what we know is that it leads to hearing loss and sometimes severe neurodevelopment disabilities. And so Hayley Smithers-Sheedy, in her PhD, she was looking at blood samples that are being collected on newborn screening cards. And so with consent from the families, researchers will look at the CMV DNA, and from there establish how common is CMV in cerebral palsy. And I think this will be another very important finding to sort of explain one of the many pathways to cerebral palsy. And then, as you know, cerebral palsy is often accompanied with associated conditions or secondary impairments that we sometimes call it. And in children with CMV, I mentioned hearing loss might be one of them. Another one is bone deformities, so that when strong forces from the muscle tones sort of move bones out of place, and hip dislocations. So like 1 in 3 is at risk of hip dislocations or hip displacements. So what I will do is just talk a little bit about those preventative measures that we do around there. And in Sweden, a monitoring program called CP-UP started in the early 90s, and they routinely screened and recorded children's development and movement. And this has led that over time, the timing of botulinum toxin and surgeons, the timing of those interventions has slightly changed. And I guess in order to optimize their effect. So what the Swedes have discovered or found that by measuring and ongoing and regular measurements and intervening at the right time, they have been able to completely eradicate all hip dislocations. And severe contractures and scoliosis have been reduced with 60 to 70%. So inspired by those findings and that implications for clinical practice, what we here at Cerebral Palsy have done is that we have created a comprehensive program called CP Checkup, because we recognize that hips and bones, and that's just one part of it, a human, we are so many other things. And there are so many other areas that we want to see if we can make a difference in. So what we have done now is this program called CP Checkup is now embedded in our LifePoint services. And I guess it's also an example of where research and clinical practice go hand in hand. So here you can see me with the goniometer, but alongside then taking measures of arms and legs, we are also screening for pain, nutrition, communication, cognition, learning, and well-being. And we believe that, as I mentioned, that if we address this in a holistic way, and I think we will be then better sort of shaped in order to provide timely interventions, that not only will help the individual, but over time also hopefully reduce the rates of secondary impairments. And then to assist families and clinicians in making decisions on what interventions might be most suitable for a person, Cerebral Palsy Alliance is building this resource called About CP, a humongous knowledge translation project, but so important, and it's led by Dr. Margaret Wallen. And About CP holds information using the latest and best evidence available, and it's a collaboration between clinicians, researchers, and researchers both here in Australia as well as overseas abroad. And we ask people knowledgeable in their fields to help us rate the evidence of the research findings. So for each intervention, I'm not sure if you can see, but for each intervention, the reader gets like a quick overview of the cost and time and what is involved, and for whom the intervention might be most appropriate for. And then there are links, so if you want to delve in more and read further, you can. So here, this is an example of an eye gaze technology, and so the information available on eye gaze technology is a bit limited. It shows some promising results, but it's actually not has been done for children, in particular young children for cerebral palsy. And for those who haven't seen what an eye gaze technology is, it's just a little thingy like this, and that is attached to the computer, either a laptop or a smart, like an iPad, and then through the eyes. So if this is sitting like that, it picks up your eye movements, and then your eyes are actually moving the cursor on the screen. So you can just imagine how quick and easy that would be for someone who don't have their full control or voluntary control over their arms or are not able to speak. So it's a great little tool. So it's so great. So I'm actually going to do a study with that together with Margaret and some clinicians and users who have already tested these products. We have put together a little pilot where we want to work out, and I guess this is an example of an intervention study, where we will want to find out what are the features in these eye gaze, because there are different brands, and which brand might work better than another, and what are the features that works for these young kids. and how do we best help the families and the children in actually learning how to use it. And then we're using this pilot to also prepare for a larger study, because often these studies, we need a lot of participants, and so with this particular one, we are already talking to people overseas in Sweden, the UK and Belgium and the US, and we're hoping that if we can pull together, we will get some really nice data that hopefully then can provide a little bit more information on how best to sort of proceed in this field. So that's all for me. I just want to say that we have an exciting 2016 ahead of us, and I just wanted to thank you guys for your support and supporting CP Alliance, all our different initiatives. Thank you.